He and the great poet Cesar Vallejo were at a house in the country that had belonged to Vallejo's family since he was a child. It was empty, and all the walls were painted a bluish white. The whole effect was very peaceful, Paul said, and in the dream he thought Vallejo lucky to be able to go to such a place to work. "This looks like the holding place before the afterlife," Paul told him. Vallejo didn't hear him, and he had to repeat himself twice. Finally, the poet, who in real life died at 46, penniless in a rainstorm, just as he had predicted, understood and nodded. Before they entered the house, Vallejo had told Paul a story about how his uncle used to dip his fingers in the mud to make a mark on his forehead, something to do with Ash Wednesday. "And then Vallejo said Paul, he would do something I never understood. To illustrate, Vallejo dipped his 2 fingers in the mud and drew a mustache across Paul's upper lip." They both laughed. Throughout the dream, Paul said, most striking was the complicity between them, as if they had known each other many years. Naturally, Paul had thought of me when he'd woken up because when we were sophomores in college, we'd met in a seminar on avant-garde poets. We'd become friends because we always agreed with each other in class, while everyone else disagreed with us more and more vehemently as the semester progressed. And with time, an alliance had formed between Paul and me that, after all these years, 5, could still be unfolded and inflated instantly. He asked how I was, alluding to the breakup, which someone must have told him about. I said I was okay, except that I thought maybe my hair was falling out. I also told him that along with the piano, the sofa, chairs, bed, and even the silverware had gone with R, since when I met him I'd been living more or less out of a suitcase, whereas he had been like a sitting Buddha, surrounded by all of the furniture he'd inherited from his mother. Paul said he thought he might know someone, a poet, a friend of a friend, who was going back to Chile and might need a foster home for his furniture. A phone call was made, and it was confirmed that the poet, Daniel Varsky, did indeed have some items he didn't know what to do with, not wanting to sell them in case he changed his mind and decided to return to New York. Paul gave me his number and said Daniel was expecting me to get in touch. I put off making the call for a few days, mostly because there was something awkward about asking a stranger for his furniture, even if the way had already been paved, and also because, in the month since R and all of his many belongings had gone, I'd become accustomed to having nothing. Problems only arose when someone else came over, and I would see reflected in the look on my guest's face that from the outside the conditions, my conditions, Your Honor, appeared pathetic. When I finally called Daniel Varsky, he picked up after 1 ring. There was a cautiousness in that initial greeting, before he knew who it was on the other end, that I later came to associate with Daniel Varsky, and with Chileans, few as I've met in general. It took a minute for him to sort out who I was, a minute for the light to go on, revealing me as a friend of a friend and not some loopy woman calling about his furniture. She'd heard he wanted to get rid of it, or just give it out on loan. A minute in which I considered apologizing, hanging up, and carrying on as I had been with just a mattress, plastic utensils, and the 1 chair. But once the light had gone on, "Aha! Of course, sorry, it's all waiting right here for you." His voice softened and became louder at the same time, giving way to an expansiveness I also came to associate with Daniel Varsky, and by extension, everyone who hails from that dagger pointing at the heart of Antarctica, as Henry Kissinger once called it. He lived all the way uptown on the corner of 99th Street and Central Park West. On the way, I stopped to visit my grandmother, who lived in a nursing home on West End Avenue. She no longer recognized me, but once I'd gotten over this, I found myself able to enjoy being